All right. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone had an amazing week and amazing weekend. I'm excited for today's, I guess this will be class 3 of 7. So we're pretty excited. And I guess it's Raheel is going to be training today, or he's the first trainer for today. And he'll be talking about the proper election period. So Raheel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'm really excited again to be here to talk to all of you. Now, I know how daunting all of this information can be, but I have the full confidence in everyone here with your expertise and with your knowledge to be able to pick it up real quick. Today's election period training is going to cover kind of a high-level overview of what an election period is, and you'll know shortly what that means. This is kind of the bread and butter of Medicare. This is what drives your ability to enroll somebody into a plan. So think of it kind of as a window into an enrollment. So we'll be talking a lot about that today. Just to give you some background about myself, my name is Raheel Pinjwani. I'm the Provider Business Development Manager for the NorCal region, which includes the regions of the Bay Area and Central Valley. I work closely with the provider and medical groups and the health networks, so I work on that side. A little bit different than a market manager in that I don't generally work with agents one-on-one as much. I work more on the provider side or the group side of providers and medical groups. So with that being said today, I just wanted to, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to take care of and set a few expectations before we begin. By default, everyone's going to be muted, as you know, to avoid the background noise. However, I do encourage you to ask questions. If you have any questions, feel free as we're going along to post them in the chat. And if there's spare time at the end of the training, I will answer those questions. And if there's also some spare time, we'll leave hopefully a couple minutes at the end to answer the questions. And if they're pressing questions and you ask them in the chat, there might be also one of your fellow, I guess you could say, classmates who might be able to answer those questions on the spot as well. So if there's ever anything that you want to ask, feel free to ask at any time. Be present. I know there's a lot of distractions. It's very tempting to multitask. This is a major, major topic, and it's very important, and it's going to really help you generate some sales. So if you can, pay as close attention with as minimal of distractions as possible. And finally, with this being said, ask any question that can come to your head. If you feel that you may not understand something about election periods, there's going to be more information. Obviously, there'll be a handbook. But with that being said, if there's any questions that are very pressing to you or you just don't understand the topic, do not hesitate to ask that question in the chat. So with that being said, we'll begin. Today's election period training, we'll be talking about selecting the proper election period. And our training roadmap, as you know, we've already had some excellent trainings. Last week, we covered product overview. We discovered what a PPO was, what HMOs were, how different plans worked. And now you're also a little bit familiar with how Medicare works and the structure of Medicare. So we'll be talking today about election periods. And again, these are the windows of opportunity that you will have to enroll your members into a plan. And so that the whole point of this training is to determine the eligibility and suitability of a member to be able to be enrolled into a plan. So going forward, next slide, please. We'll talk a little bit about the contracting process for you. So iLeverage is going to be sending out an e-contracting email to all of you. That is where you're going to start getting, your hands into the cookie jar per se with Medicare. Beyond that, when you start completing and submitting that paperwork, and this is largely going to be on your, however much work you put in, you can get contracted pretty quickly, depending on how quickly you submit that paperwork. You will get a party ID issued when that's done and go through a short background check. Now, this is not something to be concerned about. This is standard procedure, and it's very possible that this process could take a few days or even a week or two. It depends. Sometimes different areas may take a little longer, and sometimes just yours may take longer than the person sitting next to you, and that's nothing to worry about whatsoever. So once you get that party ID issued and that background check completed, you're going to get some certifications. These certifications are going to be very important for you to complete as quickly, but also as efficiently and as correctly as possible. These certifications are not the types of certifications that you're just going to want to click through until you get the magic 80 or 70%. These are certifications that will help you in every ounce of your selling out there. So you're going to want to be very diligent and make sure that you really understand the material, because when you get out there and you're actually selling, that's going to come as huge tip for you to be able to be successful out there and also answer the common objections, questions, concerns, and relevant topics that your members and prospective members are going to have. So those certifications, I cannot value those enough. Those are extremely important, and they are very beneficial to you as well. And finally, when that process is completed, you're actually going to get your writing ID. That is the moment that we've all been waiting for, folks. When you get your writing ID, that is, your magic step into being able to start really focusing on what is my business plan? How am I going to get my first 5 sales? How am I going to get out there and really show the market what I'm made of, and also get some sales for Medicare plans? Next slide, please. So let's go back into a review. I know that it's been a week since we last spoke, and last week's presentation by Matt was unbelievably helpful in terms of what we can expect from different types of plans. But I do really want to talk about the 3 types of major Medicare Advantage plans and talk about what they are. So why don't you take a minute? I'll give everyone 30 seconds. And if you guys can type in the chat, what are the 3 types of Medicare Advantage plans that we went over last week? Come on, guys. I know you know this stuff. I know you know it. Just go ahead and type it in the chat. Okay, awesome, Wendy. What's the third one, guys? What's the third one? And I'm not going to say it's not a trick question. It's a little bit of a trick question, but the HMO and PPO, okay, Medicare Parts A, B, and C, I guess that's technically correct, but an Advantage plan is actually going to be a Part C plan. So the Medicare Parts A and B are not considered an Advantage plan, but the C is the Medicare Advantage. Awesome. So good one, good one, Carmen. And then we got Ruby. Okay, Ruby, that's right. Okay, awesome, guys. I'm seeing really good responses here. The Part C plan is actually going to be what is referred to as Medicare Advantage or Medicare Supplement. But when it comes to Medicare Advantage, that is always going to be Part C. And the answer is going to be HMO, PPO, and the Assure plan. Now, I know we haven't touched too much on the Assure plan. We've touched a little bit about it in conversation. But the Assure plan is actually the dual plan or a dual look-alike plan, which is a Medicare and Medicaid plan, and we'll go over that more in the future. So excellent responses from everyone. I'm really glad to see that everyone is not only engaged and active, but is understanding the material. It's very evident from the responses. There was no wrong answers. Everyone was, making sure that they took what they learned and putting it out there. So I really do appreciate you all contributing here. So let's talk about what is one difference between an HMO and a PPO. This one's an easy one, right? We all know the answer to this one. What are we thinking? What do you think, Jack? Okay, networks. We got networks and choice. Okay, awesome. Danielle, that's actually a really good point. I mean, most of the time or a substantial portion of the time, the HMO may be lower cost option. So that is a really good observation. Awesome. Good recollection. Awesome, folks. Okay, so I'll show you the answer here. An HMO must use in-network services, whereas a PPO can use out-of-network services. And I know we did touch on the HMO POS a little bit, and that's a little different, but for the purposes of this conversation, the HMO remains to be as an in-network plan, whereas a PPO can use out-of-network. Awesome. And then the HMO also, for the most part, you're going to need a referral to see a specialist, whereas a PPO does not need a referral. And remember, like we had talked about last week, that referral is a huge component for a selling point for a lot of people that don't really know about Medicare Advantage. They associate that with needing a referral, but a PPO option is actually going to give them an option to not need that referral. So huge selling point there, and also a huge opportunity for our members to be able to have the free choice that they deserve. And then next question is, what individual plan would want to enroll in a United Healthcare Medicare Advantage Assure plan? So what type of person? Oh, okay, Howard, that's a really good point. Okay. Somebody who's traveler or, maybe has unique needs, maybe needs more ancillary benefits or things like that, or to travel or things like that. Okay. So somebody, I'll pull up the answer here. Awesome job, Danielle and everyone else. Somebody who has both Medicare and Medicaid, and I know we didn't talk too much about that, but ultimately, somebody who has both Medicare and Medicaid is going to want to have a share plan, right? So, you know what I'm going to do at this point? We've talked a little bit about what we've discussed in the past, and had a little bit of a review session. But now let's get into the meat of the election periods. And for that, I'm going to pass it over to Brett Johnson, who is the market manager and has years of experience out in the field as well, to speak on the topic of election periods and really get into the brunt of the conversation. So, Brett, take it over.
Oh, thank you, Rahil, and thank you, iLeverage, for having us once again. We certainly appreciate value and look forward to building upon this partnership. So far, so good. I really like this entire training platform with the weekly, taking a piece of the pie and building this entire pie. I'm going to talk a little bit about the election periods. It looks like we have about 15 or 17 or so slides to get through. So I'm going to kind of ad lib a bit and kind of get through it, but not leaving you without a clear understanding of what election periods are. Next slide. So what do we need to know about election periods? I'm going to touch on some of the most important ones. Number 4, election periods become available based on a certain life events. There are actually 4 annual election periods. And as we go through the slides, we're going to touch on each 4 of them and how they pertain to an opportunity for someone to enroll. Most importantly, you do not have to memorize them as it's indicated on bullet point number 5. We have plenty of resources available to help guide you through what election period that person or your member may be afforded during enrollment. But as a producer, trust me, you'll know them by heart. You'll only use 4 of them because there are only 4. They have other reasons why you choose an election period, but the election periods in terms of a calendar are only 4. Next slide. All right, so this is the most important of the 4. It's called the annual election period. Here's what makes it most important. First and foremost, it is the period where anyone that qualifies for Medicare Advantage can enroll in Medicare Advantage or a prescription drug plan. Okay, so this is without medical questions. So let's say Betty is on Medicare and she's been on Medicare for several years and she was with another carrier, let's say Humana. She decided that she wants to go to United Healthcare. This is the time in which she would use the annual election period. She can't just change in the middle of the year. There are some other opportunities to change, and we'll talk about them, but by most part, the annual election period is the holy grail of the election periods. She would then enroll between October 15th and December 7th. Her plan would then start January 1st. So keep in mind, AEP is what this is all about. We're trying to get everyone up and running for the great AEP. Next slide. Following AEP, we have what's called OEP. And its OEP is only specific to Medicare Advantage. So here's what that means. Let's say Betty in 2020 had a Medicare Advantage plan with Humana. And then January 15th or 20th, she decided, I don't want this plan anymore. I want to go to the United Healthcare plan. She is allowed between January 1st and March 31st to move to another MA plan. So she can then go to United Healthcare plan, or she can completely disenroll from her Medicare Advantage Humana plan to original Medicare. So keep in mind, open enrollment OEP is for those who currently enter the year on an MA plan. So there are some things that you are not eligible for, as you can see at the bottom. I don't want to bore you with all the great details. Just remember those 1, 2, 3, and 4 annual enrollment periods. So OEP is for those who have MA wanting to switch to another plan. It's like a last chance change, if you will, following the AEP. Next slide. IEP basically is your initial election period. Now, this is when you become newly eligible for Medicare. So this could either be age 65 when you turn 65. So it's a 7-month window. It's the 3 months before your 65th and 3 months after your 65th birthday. So that's this 7-month window. Now, this window could not necessarily be on your 65th birthday. It's when you become eligible for Part A and Part B. So let me break that down a little bit. I turn 65, I'm automatically become eligible. The question is, do I use my Medicare? Because if I'm still working at 65, I'm still on my group plan, I don't need Medicare, right? So the initial election period is when a consumer first becomes eligible for Medicare. That is via turning 65 or leaving an employer group plan. So that can happen anytime during the year, right? It's not an AEP or an OEP. It's your initial election period. It's IEP, number 3. Now, SEP on the next slide is the special election period. So I think on one of our slides coming, you're going to see a map where it's color coded, where you can see where the IEP, the AEP, and the OEP. What you'll notice about the SEP is considered the special election period. As I mentioned, AEP is the Holy Grail. Well, SEP too is that same Holy Grail in that you can enroll anytime between January 1st and December 31st. But it varies based on why, right? This is where the reasoning comes in. As in bullet point 2, when a consumer qualifies for a special election period due to a life event, such as moving, qualifying for extra help, getting in-care institution, loss of employer coverage, switching to a plan. And I'll kind of break a few of those down. Moving, as an example. Let's say it's April 15th, 2021, and Betty relocates from Stanislaus County and she moves to Santa Cruz County. Well, if she has an HMO, she needs to change her plan. That becomes a special election period where she can then choose a new plan. Qualifying for extra help. We kind of touched on that with the Assure plan. We haven't gone through that in great detail, but let's say you're a Medicare Part A and Part B, and you apply for what's called Medi-Cal, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, and it determines that you qualify for that extra help, then you can switch to a plan that's special for that, which is the dual eligibles, right? Next slide. So next, we're going to hand it over to Matt. Matt's going to talk a little bit about the e-learning and how you can learn more about the election periods. But again, I'll just close with, they are not very complicated. Once you understand what calendar period you're in, you'll understand what a consumer's ability to change or enroll is. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. And Brett, can you see my webpage of Jarvis?
Yes,
That's showing correctly? Awesome. Okay, perfect. So thanks guys for joining again today. We're going to be walking through kind of like an interactive learning that you guys can do on your own time, but I found it to be very valuable, just kind of simplifying things, because I know these election periods can be certainly overwhelming, just like some other material that we've gone through. But so in Jarvis, you guys are familiar with Jarvis. For those of you that have a party ID, we're going to hop into Learning Lab here. And again, you guys can do this at on your own time if you have access with that party ID. So when we're in Learning Lab, typically you're going to go to the certification page, but I do want to show you where you can do some self-learning. So as you see here, there's different courses that you can take. We're going to run down to our Election Periods Made Easy e-learning. And I kind of walked through this course already, and you can walk through it multiple times. If you finish it and want to do it again, you're more than welcome to. It'll just ask if you want to resume where you left off. And I'm going to say no, we're going to start over here. So again, a nice interactive learning tool that you can use and is accessible to you, again, if you have your party ID. So let's get started. So why do we need to know about election periods? And Raheel and Brett touched on that a little bit. There's certain times of the year where we have to have a reason to get a consumer enrolled into a plan. We can't just enroll them just for the heck of it. So that's why we want to do this discovery and understanding election periods to give you the most opportunity to write business. So we'll move forward here. So AEP obviously is straightforward. Anybody that's Medicare eligible can make a change in the plan with their plan from October 15th to December 7th. Now, the other election periods that Brett just discussed, some can be complicated and confusing. And the real reason is each one works a little bit differently. So understanding when to use the proper election period and asking those correct questions. And yeah, there's a lot of them. That is the case, but it does allow you to have more opportunities to enroll members down the road. We do have a job aid that I won't go over in depth today, but we do have a job aid that helps you with identifying those election periods. Again, sometimes I get questions on, hey, what election period should I use? I have this situation going on. And even though I've been doing this for some time, I still have to use our job aid or election period booklet to refresh myself and make certain that that election period is valid for the consumer. One thing is, you know, I'm busy talking to consumers and now you want me to hunt for one of these, you know, why is this so important? Well, it's part of our CMS requirement. And I want to pause for a second. These election periods only apply to our Medicare Advantage products and our prescription drug products. What we're talking about today does not apply to our Medicare supplement line of business. That's going to be in a different session. This is only for our federally ran programs, which is, again, Medicare Advantage and prescription drug. Okay, so let's get into it. We're not going to play this video, but you can kind of look at how you can utilize our election period job aid. I'm just going to exit out of this real quick. Let's see if I can do this. We're going to move on to more of the interactive portion where we'll run through some scenarios. So as Brett mentioned, there's different election periods that we use. Many times it's when people are aging into Medicare. Maybe it's a move or a change in residence, as well as dual LIS. Today, for the purpose of time and just making sure we get down the core election periods, we're going to be walking through our initial election period, our open enrollment period, and then our change in residence, okay? So let's first start with initial, and I know we've talked about this before. We've introduced you to that 7-month window that you can enroll. So some of this may seem familiar. You might be asking, what's ICEP? That's for Medicare Advantage only products where they don't have prescription drug coverage. We don't have them in Northern California, so you don't have to worry about that at this time. The best way that I remember the difference between ICEP and IEP is ICEP stands for I Can't Eat Pills, which is a prescription drug coverage. I know it sounds weird, but it stuck with me and it works. So, but again, you don't have to worry about that specific option. We're going to focus on the IEP option. So let's say a member is aging into Medicare, whether it's turning 65 in this situation, or they're just obtaining Medicare in May. Again, if a client calls you in February and is interested in a product, but they don't age in until May, that doesn't mean that they're off the table and you know, you can say better luck next time. We have that election period available. Now, if you were to write their plan in February, it's not going to start until their Medicare becomes effective in May, okay? Same thing goes for March and April. It's going to be that May effective date when the Medicare kicks in. Now, we also have May. They can enroll, on May 5th, you get a call, their Medicare already began, and they want to enroll. Well, we have to do it for that next month. We can't backdate it to a May 1st start date. It's always the next month following. So it would be a June 1st effective date that the plan would go into place. And then the same thing goes for June, July, and August. It's going to be that next effective month. Okay. So again, that's our initial enrollment period window. And again, and it kind of walks you through and kind of says, yep, you did it right, or we'll see here, if you do it incorrect, they'll tell you why. So a nice interactive tool that you can have at your disposal. So, and this happens quite frequently, you might enroll a member, they use their plan for a month, and they say, well, wait, I want to switch plans. I don't really think this plan is best fit for me. That's fine. We can't use that same initial election period again, even if they are in that 7-month window, because we've already used it. Once you use it and the plan goes into effect, it is considered null and void at that point in time. We would need to find a different election period that would fit their needs, or we'd have to wait until our annual enrollment period at the end of the year. But and we didn't touch on this too much, but I'll go over it now, and in our next little session here with OEP, we do have one option in this situation. The OEP newly eligible is for consumers who sign up for a Medicare Advantage plan and want to make a change. So again, this is when they first start Medicare, they're in their initial enrollment period, they enroll in a plan, and then they decide they want to make a change. Through this OEP newly eligible election period, they would have the ability to change their plan. So we'll dive into that a little bit more here, and we'll talk about OEP and OEP newly eligible. So let's first start with OEP, and Brett did a great job of explaining kind of what that period looks like. And specifically, what is special about OEP, if we look at it, is it only newly eligible Medicare consumers can use it? No. Can it let current members change their plan after the new year if they'd like? No. It actually works when the consumer has a Medicare Advantage plan and is looking to make a change. So the big indication is, are they currently on a Medicare Advantage plan? And that is the correct answer. So again, it walks you through and tells you, what's correct and what isn't. So again, OEP, the starting point is any MA plan as of January 1, and they can change to another Medicare Advantage plan. They can also go to a prescription drug plan, or they can go back to original Medicare. So they have some options in what coverage option they want. The big thing again is they have to be in a Medicare Advantage plan. They can't be on original Medicare, and they cannot be on a prescription drug plan wanting to move to a Medicare Advantage plan or a prescription drug plan. Okay. So that's OEP. So again, the timeline, I like the visuals here. You don't have to worry about this portion. This is more for our producer help desk, which is our sales support team. They're able to look at this information to let you know if that election period is available. So and once they use their election period, say they want to make a change from January and start February 1, that OEP election period is gone at that point. So we'll talk a little bit about OEP newly eligible. And again, it's for consumers who first enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, and then they want to change their mind within a specific window. And that specific window is 3 months, including the Medicare eligibility month. So if they enroll in April for a June 1st start date, great. And they want to make a change in June, it would go into effect of a new plan in July using this newly eligible. Okay, so they have that second chance once they become eligible, just like our normal OEP type of plan or election period, excuse me. But this is, again, for those that are aging in to Medicare, and it's kind of their first shot at choosing a plan. They get a second chance. And then again, the same plan type criteria applies. So they can change to a different Medicare Advantage plan. They can go to original Medicare or to a prescription drug plan. All right, so let's play a quick game of match 'em. There's different call scenarios that we'll walk through here. And again, you can do this on your own time as well, but let's look at the first one. So it's February 15th. A client has an MA plan and wants to move to a prescription drug plan. So based on the criteria that we just reviewed, what do we think? Would they be eligible for an OEP election period? Feel free to use the chat. I don't have the chat up here. Let me see if I can get it up here. The answer is yes. OEP is available. And since they enrolled in February 15th, it's going to be that next effective month. So March 1st would be that effective date, okay? So now we're looking at March 7th. We have a client that is on a prescription drug plan, has been hearing a lot of great things about our Medicare Advantage plan. And they want to see if they can enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan. Now, using this OEP election period, would they be eligible? Yeah, good job, Jack. So no, they're not eligible because they're moving. They currently have that prescription drug plan, right? If it was the other way around, like we had in the last scenario, yeah, we'd be good to go. All right, good job. So now it's May 9th. We have a member that just turned 65 in March, has our HMO plan, which is a Medicare Advantage plan, and wants to move to a PPO product, again, a Medicare Advantage plan. Can they do this? And what election period would they want to use? Yeah, the last one. So that's going to be our OEP newly eligible. And since it's May, we'll go for that next effective date, which is going to be June. Nice job. All right. Couple left here. We're halfway home. So it's August 15th. We have a client that turned 65 in July, has that prescription drug plan, and realizes, oh, I think I made a mistake. I think I want that bundled coverage of a Medicare Advantage plan. Can we use this election period, the OEP or OEP newly eligible? What do you guys think? No. Wendy says no. I think I agree with her, right? Because it's a PDP. She currently has a PDP. All right. It's October 19th. We have a client that turns 65 on September 1st, has a Medicare Advantage plan, and decides, you know, I want to go to just a prescription drug plan. Do we have that opportunity? And if so, what does it look like? Yeah, Danielle's quick. Yes, newly eligible because they just turned 65 and they want to move. They have that Medicare Advantage plan. That's the indicator that we can use that OEP newly eligible. And again, it's going to go into effect that next month, so November 1st. And that makes the final option obviously easy. It's January 27th, moving from an HMO to an HMO POS, which are our Medicare Advantage products. Do they have that option? Yes, they would, because they're in that window. So let's see if we're all correct. Hope so. Awesome. Excellent. So again, you can do this on your own time as well and kind of test your skills. And again, there are many different type of interactive learnings, not just specifically to election periods, but as you saw, we have a lot of different content that has that same structure. So the final one, talking a little bit more about the special election period, a very common one that we see is change in residence. So let's look a little bit more on that. So the key differentiator, the plan will go into effect after the consumer officially moves, okay? So it's January 15th. This guy's having a tough day moving some big pieces of furniture. In this situation, their plan would go into effect the next month, February 1st. So we were notified on, sometime in January that he moved. we need to write him for a February 1st election period. All right, come on, load. Hopefully this works. So what do I do about my upcoming doctor visits and prescription fills? So let's look a little bit about that. This timeline will be important to keep in mind if consumers have questions as they're making plans between their current coverage and where they're going to be residing. So we see a lot of people maybe move to California from Florida, Arizona. They continue to have their coverage until they get into their new plan in their new area. So if the client notifies us before they move, we want to look at that move date and then plan accordingly, okay? Maybe we found out that they moved and they notify us, you know, hey, I moved last month. I realized I can't get my prescriptions filled. What can I do? We will want to write them in a plan for that next month effectively. Now, if they forgot that they moved and didn't notify. So if a consumer forgets to notify us, and CMS does, they could be disenrolled from their plan. It's actually 6 months after, so a little too much detail here, but the big thing is they want to notify us if they move, so that we can move them into an election, a new plan in their area. As you note here, they have this special election period for 2 months to enroll in a plan in their new area. So they get a little bit more leeway time to make that change, but it is important to ask those questions on if you don't find an election period right off the bat. This is a good one to ask about. Have you recently moved? And it might be from a county to a county. We have different plans in Santa Cruz than we do in Santa Cruz County than we do to San Mateo. That would determine a change in residence, a special election period, and an enrollment in a new plan. So really important question to ask. All right, so let's do another quick little interactive activity here. So the consumer notifies us in April that they moved March 15th. What date do we want to put that plan into effect for? April 1st. May 1st. So we have couple different options. Since they notified us in April, maybe it's April 15th, even though they moved a month or so ago, we have to use that next month effective date. So it's tricky, a little tricky. We want to do a May effective date. So it's whenever we write that application, that date, it's going to be the next month. So in February, we get notified, hey, you know, we have somebody that's kind of on top of things. We're going to be moving in March 15th. What option do we have there in February? All right, so we got some different answers here. April, June, April 1st. So notifies us in I see April a lot, so let's choose April. Let's see if we got this correct. Now in April, we get a notification that they're going to be moving in May. So what's our options there? June effective date, right? And finally, February. We get notified sometime in February that they're moving February 28th. Leaves us March 1st. Let's see if we're right here. Awesome. So the big thing and something that it can be confusing at times is we don't, so in this situation, we're notified in April that they're moving in May. Now, yes, we could write them for a May 1st effective date, but they're going to have coverage in their previous state or location from May 1st to May 12th. Without that coverage that they typically would have in that area. So that's why we always want to do the next month after they move so that they don't lose coverage in their current location in case anything does happen. Okay. And again, we have tools that kind of help out with this, you know, putting in an effective date and a move date to give you the right answer. So we have some spreadsheets that are available as well. All right. Oh, let's see here. So again, have you moved recently? Yes, and there's again this spreadsheet flow chart that can kind of help you determine the date and election period that you can use. All right. So dual LAS, we haven't talked about that too much. I know we brought up that there is this Medi-Cal and we have this Assure plan. How does it work? This is kind of its own animal, and we'd like to do this kind of separately. We do want you to understand the main election periods for right now. And then this chronic, we don't have any chronic special needs plans, but if somebody has a chronic condition, they may be eligible for an election period to change plans. So feel free to, you guys can do this on your own as well, go through these options. But for today's purpose, we just want to hit on the main ones that you'll be using most frequently, okay? So with that being said, I'm going to move this over and now go back to our slide. So I'm a visual person. I like to see this. This just kind of breaks down the different election periods based on the calendar year. As you can see, we have AEP towards Q4. And then right after that, we hop into our OEP election period, okay? Obviously, the newly eligible is throughout the calendar year due to dependent on when a client does receive Medicare for the first time. And same thing goes for IEP and ICEEP, I can't eat pills. And then we talked a little bit about SEP. And there's a lot of different special election periods based on life events. So it's important to ask those questions on, has anything happened recently? And we'll dive a little deeper into that, but we want to keep it simple for now. And then this dual LAS SCP, again, we're going to talk about that in detail later on. It's not something that's pressing at this moment. We want you to feel comfortable with these first few election periods before we start getting into other programs. So with that being said, I do want to provide just a little bit more detail. The biggest thing with our Medicaid individuals that also have Medicare is they have election periods by a quarter basis. So as you saw on this last slide, they have an election period in Q1, Q2, and Q3, and then come Q4, it's that AEP option. So we're just getting your feet wet with dual LAS. It's something that our extra help program that it is a common election period, but it's kind of its own thing. So we'll be going through that in detail. We won't miss it, but we're just getting you a little bit more exposed to this type of election period. And again, AEP, there's no of that election period there. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to Brett, and he's going to touch a little bit more on, and I'm sure you guys are feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all these acronyms and what they mean. I feel like I'm reading half the alphabet at this point. Don't worry, we have these tools that you can leverage, and Brett's going to walk through that right now to kind of give you an idea of where to find things. So Brett, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Absolutely. Yeah, it can be overwhelming, but just judging by some of the answers through some of the inside the chat, with Wendy and Danielle and what have you, they seem to kind of get it. It's really not that complicated once you get into it. The big takeaway here is the resources. What you've been shown so far is that we have resources, whether they are in print or whether they're interactive in the e-learning platform. There are resources to learn and understand this stuff, including having us as market managers, right? In the beginning, we expect for you to pick up the phone. Hey, Brett, hey, Matt, what is the election period for this? I can't seem to solve it. We can walk you through it as well as show you where to find it for future reasons. All right, next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about the resources. One of the great resources with regards to elections, next slide, is the Enrollment Handbook. And it is a book of about 240 something pages, I believe, the last time I saw it, but it is the election period booklet. I call it the election period Bible. It goes through everything, including the enrollment timeline, enrollment period examples, initial election period examples, as well as the SEP, which is the special election period examples. It has cheat sheets, coding. What that means is once you choose an election period like SEP, special enrollment period, you're going to have an additional step to that, which says based on what, right? Move, relocated, loss of coverage, things of that nature. So once you realize or understand that you do have a special election period, you still have to indicate a reason. And this election book gives you that answers. Next slide. The Lean platform is a platform that you'll have access to once you complete and get your writing ID. This is where we enroll and find some additional information. This is where our scope of appointment is. This is where you can find providers, you can look up drugs, so on and so forth. But if you notice the two bottom left purple, this is where you can find the Enrollment Handbook. So you literally just click on that. It'll go to a PDF version of the Election Handbook. You can save it to your desktop. You can share it amongst each other, whatever. There's also an election period worksheet. Now this one's pretty cool because if you click on that one, it'll ask you some quick little Q&A and help you solve or determine what your election period is. So again, the takeaway here is that there are resources. Election period is very, very important, as Matt was alluding to. It's also very important for marketing reasons. And here's what I mean there. Different times of the year, you're going to be marketing to people in different ways. SEP, as we know, is open all year round because there's various reasons why you, or multiple reasons why you would want to re-enroll in Medicare. But you're going to be targeting people turning 65 during some parts of the year. You're going to be targeting people that already have a plan that you want them to move to a different plan. So understanding your election periods is going to be important for your marketing and for how you build your book of business throughout the entire year. What we're hoping to have yourselves be are year-round producers. There's a great percentage of people who only come in during AEP because it's just the annual enrollment period. There's no medical questions and you can just pretty much enroll anyone. But it's also important to have a really balanced book of business where you're doing business in OEP, SEP, and AEP, right? One of the things I do want to point out regarding AEP before I turn it back over, or we're going to cover some best practices, is that AEP, again, is October 15th through December 7th. When you enroll someone during AEP, for whatever reason, if they're new to Medicare or they already had a plan and they're trying to switch to a new plan, you must remember that two things. One, it doesn't start until January 1st, but here's the kicker. During that entire AEP period, someone can re-enroll in another plan. Yep, you heard me correct. So you can meet your member or your client October 25th and you enroll them in United Healthcare's Secure Horizons plan. They can get a call from someone else November 19th and decide they want to enroll in Humana's Gold plan. You won't know about this until January when you are not compensated or that member has fallen off your book of business. So during AEP, it's called last in wins. They can enroll in 50 plans. However, the last one that they enroll in prior to December 7th will be their plan effective January 1st. So keep that in mind. Another point I want to touch on is effective dates. All effective dates for all plans are the first of the month following the election period. So if you had an election occur April 17th, your plan goes in effect May. Same with if something happened in July, you moved, it's going to start in August. So It's the first of the month following the actual election effect. Okay, last but not least, meds. I want to touch on that. Medications. You want to encourage your members to use the 90-day mail-in, especially for those who are relocating or assuming that they may be about to relocate. This way, they have plenty of medications to weather the transfer of moving and transferring over to a new plan. All right, next slide. Just going to briefly just touch on the best practices, and we're going to start wrapping it up. If there's any questions, please start putting them in the chat so we can answer your questions. And of course, as always, you can reach out to each of us individually. Best practices. Listen for consumer clues in the conversation. And what that basically means is, I just retired from Chevron. It was effective, or I'm retiring from Chevron. It's effective April 23rd. Okay, well, that's a special enrollment period, loss of credible coverage, loss of group in coverage. You can now have a May 1st effective date on your new plan. Ask good questions to complete the needs analysis, such as that. Meaning, are you on a plan? Do you currently have coverage? Those are the good questions in the needs analysis. Understand all election period options. Well, after today, you should have a pretty good understanding of it. Use the election period for which a consumer qualifies. Absolutely. You want to get that right, because you can enroll, and the system will probably allow you to enroll in a wrong election period, and you'll hear from our enrollment team saying it was declined, or it won't go through, or it's pending. It's usually because of your election period. So we'll talk to you guys more about that once you get your writing ID and you submit your first piece of business. We'll show you how to track it to make sure that you did everything correctly before the first of the month. You don't want to wait until after the first of the month or the start of the plan to learn that it did not actually start. Explain election periods in a consumer-friendly way. Simplify it. It's just AEP, OEP, IEP. It's just, this is your period in which you can enroll. Be careful of easily misinterpreted election periods. One that is often misinterpreted is the OEP, where someone comes in and they did not have a Medicare Advantage plan and they failed to enroll during the AEP period, right? October through December, and then they want to enroll in a plan or switch a plan, pardon me. Well, you can't, because you don't have one to begin with. So little things like that is the things you want to be cognizant of with regards to election periods. Use the election periods in hierarchy order. So that's basically, you follow which one that fits, right? If we are in AEP, you use AEP. If we're in SEP, you use SEP. And that's pretty much it. Again, the last takeaway is we have the resources ourselves and plenty of stuff online through all of our platforms. Again, thanks for having us. And I don't know if we have any questions. Matt, Raheel, Jeff, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Brett and Matt, for those comprehensive conversations. And I think, Brett, it's really great that you mentioned that the AEP is last in wins. That's a huge point to keep in mind. With that being said, folks, that basically wraps up our presentation here. I was hoping that everyone could put 1 point of learning in the chat, just one thing that you found to be very unique or interesting about election periods. If you could throw that in the chat right now, and we'll discuss questions. Awesome, last in. And if you have a question, feel free to throw that in the chat right now at this time as well. Now, keep in mind, we'll be able to answer some questions here, like we mentioned, but like was just mentioned, there's so much available in Jarvis. You can go into that, election handbook. There's so many resources there for you. From personal experience, when I began, I was so intimidated by election periods, but once you really get out there and you've completed your certifications and everything like that, you're going to have so many resources at your fingertips. It's going to be the click of a button, and you're gonna be like, that was so easy. That was so much less concerning than I ever thought it would be. So keep in mind that, you know, it's okay to not know everything right away. No one's expecting you to remember all of this off the bat, but we do expect, and you should make it a highlight for yourself to utilize those excellent resources that you do have. So there are a ton of resources out there. All right, let's see. So Michael, was that a question regarding if is that an interesting factor, a question that you had? Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, with that being said, it looks like there's a lot of interesting points that people are mentioning, but I'll turn it back over to Jeff to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you that are participating and jumping on the chat. But I want to thank everyone for being on today and all the great information. Wow, definitely a lot of information. I'm glad we recorded it and excited for the future, you guys. Again, we'll see you guys next week. Again, thank all the panelists for all their time today and all the energy of helping all of us. So we'll see you guys next week, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.